So welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another scenario from the scenario Discord. This one I don't think was made by Heath Wharton. I think this one was actually made by Outfit, and it is called The Isolated Town. And just a little look at the map before we go into the factions. You can obviously see that this is the town itself, surrounded on all sides by these natural cliffs. So again, it's more of a natural fortress than a constructed one, like with regular sieges. And there are several ways in, some of which are larger than others. This one back here, as we sort of scoot over to the back, is obviously quite a wide area to try and defend. But it is also the one where the attackers are going to have to march most before they get here. The other two entrances are over here respectively, so it's a smaller avenue where one army can pretty comfortably defend it, and then there's also one over here, and again another army can probably pretty comfortably defend this. There is also this sort of outer settlement over here, which is an interesting feature on the map because it means that maybe the defenders could sally out, but it's more, I think, for the attackers to have a place where they could potentially fall back if the first wave doesn't work, so that's an interesting little feature. I am a little bit concerned actually, because if you are looking at this thinking it's maybe looking a little bit more janky than usual, that's because I have had to turn down some of the graphic settings. Reshade is still on, however, so it shouldn't be too bad, because I got 3 fatal graphics errors when trying to load in when I was trying to do things, and I think it's tied into the anti-aliasing because it did seem to go away when I turned it off, but so that's a little bit strange, but hopefully it'll be fine. I hope it doesn't crash halfway through because that would be heartbreaking. It's not the longest scenario. Only 27,000 frames is substantial, but not enormous like some tend to be. But now we'll go through the army compositions, and we'll start with the defenders, seeing as we are over here. And we start off with the Dwarves of Erebor, commanded by Bobo 16k. So we've got some Ironfoot warriors at the front, along with some Ironfoot pikes. And you know, if anyone's going to be able to defend the front, which is obviously where a lot of pressure is going to be put on from the attackers, it's going to be the Dwarves, because they're going to have the mass to withstand a large assault. We've also got some Axe Guard of Erebor back here, previously the Axemen of Erebor, of course, with some AP damage. Some more damage is always going to be very appreciated, considering most of the infantry around here is more based around their defense, stuff like the Ironfoot spears as well. We've also got some crossbows, so some Ironfoot crossbowmen. Something they might struggle with here on the front is being purely outranged by the enemy, and the Dwarves of Erebor will have to just kind of sit here and take it if the attackers decide to skirmish them down from long range. They are pretty good at resisting arrow fire, to be fair, but it's still going to be maybe a little bit frustrating for Erebor to have to withstand arrow fire before having to go into the fight, particularly their pikes, which could well take a few losses. We've also got some Erebor legionaries over here, and they are essentially the higher tier variant of the Ironfoot infantry. The equivalent from the Dwarves of Khazad-dûm, this would be like the 3rd infantry, 3rd legion, and yeah, they aren't AP anymore, but they are still a very accomplished infantry unit in a sustained fight. We've also got some halberds back here, an AP polearm, and then back here we also have the Highborns of Erebor. I do remember someone at one point asking me where the Dwarven noblemen went. Well, they've just been renamed the Highborns of Erebor, and I think they have also... Yep, this is where King Dane is with his slightly low-res Warhammer, but even so, this is a multiple HP infantry unit, so it's going to be difficult for the attackers to just force their way through the Dwarves at the front. They're just going to have to try and hope they can grind them down. We've also got some Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin over here, which is a unit you don't see every day. They are very expensive to bring in a normal situation after all. I don't know what sets them apart from the other units, but because I haven't actually looked at Erebor in the same level of detail as I have Khazad-dûm yet, but I assume it's going to be quite similar to how Khazad-dûm are divided up. They're probably AP based on their axes and based on the fact they are Dragon Slayers, but that probably also means that they have less in the way of base stats than the other multiple HP units that Erebor have available to them. We've also got some Ironfoot crossbows over here, a Dwarven catapult, which is going to be very good in that choke point. And back here we've also got some more high tier units. We've got the Sons of Durin, of course, the legendary, very hard to kill shock unit, their AP warhammers. Some Ironfoot axe throwers back here as well, so that could potentially be very useful in the later game to really thin out the herd. And then over here we have the fearsome Blacklock engineers. The very high missile damage that they provide can really hunt down and kill enemy elite infantry units and cavalry units, and pretty much anything actually if they can get a hold of it, although they are outranged of course by archers. And then over here we move on to the 2nd defending army, the Kingdom of Dale, commanded by Engsfitz, and he is going to be defending this side over here with part of his army. He's got some Sword Masters of Karnan, which are of course not a multiple HP sword shock unit anymore. They are much more rare. They are still going to be able to dish out pretty impressive amounts of damage to lower tier orcs in particular. Then we have the Earls of Esgaroth over here, a heavily armoured mainline infantry unit pretty expensive to bring usually, but of course that's no issue in a scenario. Also got some Dale Spearmen over here, Dalian Spearmen. I don't think they're AP anymore. Their spear unit, well, their unit model has been changed, and so have their spears. Their spears are not barbed anymore, so they are just regular spears now, but that's fine, because, you know, Dale have got other options when it comes to armor-piercing units. We've also got the Dalian Marksmen over here, a very nice archer unit. Dale, of course, all about their archers. And over here we've got some more Dalian Marksmen, just putting some stakes over here to make sure their line can't be circumvented by any marauding cavalry units. And having a look here, his front line is basically entirely made of Dalian Spearmen and Barding Herd. So he's got the staying power of the spears combined with the mass, of course, and then the armor-piercing damage of those halberds. It's going to be very difficult to force your way through over here, but I do think eventually attrition will probably tell on this line unless they receive some backup. But of course the rest of the Dalian army is over here, and he's got some Dalian Royal Guard. Not a multiple, well, they are a multiple HP archer unit, but they are not AP anymore. But this is where King Brand is hanging out. Got some more Swordmasters of Carnan over here, and we also have some Earls of Escaroth. I think he's actually getting ready to help defend the back entrance over here should it be necessary. I think there's another entrance actually as well. We'll have a look at that in a moment. The Black Shot Dragon Slayers, of course, one of those AP options I was talking about just a moment ago. They're going to be able to pick their target and do a lot of damage to it from long range, and they're not half bad in melee either. With their Wind Lances, over here we've got some Bardian Marksmen with the armor upgrade. Again, a very resilient archer unit. Pretty damn good in terms of missile damage as well. This is what really sets them apart from the equivalent units from the likes of Umbar and Gondor. And then over here we have some Lake Town infantry, so some basic units just to fill out the army. We've also got one unit of, well, two units of cavalry. We've got the Dalian cavalry, and then we've got the Earls of Dale over here. It's going to be interesting to see how they use that cavalry. And then finally we have the Girian's Paladins, an extremely powerful arm-piercing shock troop. And that's just about it for Dale. So now we shall move on to the final army, final defending army anyway. Commanded by Starling, we have Gondor, and he's got some Gandalf's retinue bodyguard, a multiple HP cavalry unit, but they aren't particularly good in a fight against other cavalry, at least not when it comes to units of a similar cost to themselves. We also have Gandalf over here. But really what lets them down is the fact that against other knight units they tend to do pretty poorly. They can of course do well against other cavalry that is not multiple HP because, you know, they are. But ultimately I wouldn't recommend sort of sending your Gondorian cavalry like this into a fight against other cavalry unless they're backed up. We've also got some Gondor Knights over here, which are a unit you're not going to see in the regular version of Reforged. I'm not entirely sure about their stats either, but I have seen them used by J-Monster in the first scenario that I played on 0.95, and they didn't seem to be recklessly overpowered, but it is worth mentioning that they do offer Gondor more cavalry power than they would have in a normal battle. Don't expect to be able to use your Gondorian cavalry as well as Starling may be able to use it here, because that's a lot of power that Gondor can wield when they have a good cavalry line as well. This is actually another entrance that I missed previously, so let's go through the infantry line for Gondor. We've got several units of Gondor Spearmen fully armor upgraded with their plate armor. We also have some Caer Andros Swordmasters over here, which are of course the equivalent to the Swordmasters of Carnan. Some Pelagia Marines, you know, the javelins may well prove to be very useful. We've got a fortress in here, which I believe you could take shelter in. But Wardens of the White Tower, Elisar's Honor Guard with Aragorn in the unit, and then we've also got the Shielded Fountain Guard, probably my favourite of the better Gondorian infantry units because it really plays to Gondor's strength. And then over here we also have some Gondor infantry fully upgraded as well. Most of these units are going to be, we've got the Veterans of Osgiliath also fully upgraded with their plates, Wardens of Minas Ithil, potentially going to be very powerful, and then some Gondor archers, some infantry, and then at the front we do have some Guards of Osgiliath. There's a lot of elite units in this Gondor army, but they will probably need it based on the number of attackers that are going to be coming towards them. And we shall start off. We'll go through the attacking armies a little bit more quickly because it's going to be mostly the same across all of them. It's just going to be the level of elite troops each one has that's going to differ. We have Tydasia playing as Mordor. He's got some orc fodder, of course, at the front here, full line of fodder, as well as some Morannon Guard, Morannon Halberds, and some Morannon Infantry, not upgraded, so they're just going to be the standard variant, and some more Morannon Infantry over here. And then back here he's also got some Orc Archers, nothing too special at the moment, so some Morannon Infantry as well, some Orc Maulers. He has got some Troll Drummers, which are going to be necessary to keep some of these lower tier units in the fight, and some more Orc Maulers. And then back here he does have some elites, so he has his Minas Morgul bodyguard, which is where his general is doubtlessly hanging out, and a couple of, well, he's got Sauron's Will and Minas Morgul chosen as well, just to make sure his army has some kind of punch, and also some trolls, which could be used to good effect to get in behind the enemy or just forcing his way through. The second attacking army, we have Orange Phaedon playing playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. He has some wargs, so Gondor's cavalry does need to be quite careful, because individually they will probably do pretty poorly against the wargs, and also some Bolgs champions as well. So this is definitely going to be the cavalry hunter army they're going to need. We've also got some heavy goblin spears, of course. Now this is a unit that I don't actually... This is a unit I would suggest everyone takes out of the scenarios as they stand, because I think they're a little bit misleading. They have 10 missile damage, which is in excess of basically anything else on the field, which essentially makes them the most cost-effective archer in the game at the moment. And I don't feel as though that is the scenario maker's intention when they put the Mountain Uruk archers on, because there's nothing wrong with using the rebel faction's units, but for the most part it would be things like the Dead of the Marshes, where you expect them to be incredibly powerful, or the Skin Changers, or the Oathbreakers, whereas I think people are putting the Mountain Uruk archers in under the understanding that they are just sort of basic orc archers like they were previously, when they are not. They are, at this point, probably the most powerful archer on the field, and that is why I think they should be removed from every scenario going forward, but that's just my 2 cents worth. Heavy Goblin crossbowmen as well, so the Misty Mountains have actually got an extremely powerful missile corps on the field. Mountain Uruk blades, Black Uruks of the mountains, and some heavy Goblin infantry. So their infantry's okay. Over here we do have the pretty cool looking White Uruk Spearmongers. We'll see how well they do. Very good against armoured units. Some Snow Trolls, and then Azog is going to be hanging out in the Goblin King's bodyguard. Then moving over here we have Isengard, played by Goddess Nimhain. He's the one for whom the replay is going to be from the perspective on, with the green army. He's got Lurtz's Hunting Pack, which is a unit I haven't actually shown yet. But they are the Isengard Elite Archer. They are also very accomplished in melee, which is more what sets them apart from the other Elite Archers. They're pretty savage in melee. I don't think many people take them on an open field, simply because stuff like the Champions of the White Hand and the Nazkai are simply too good to pass up. And also the fact that alongside the Uruk-hai archers, you're never really going to have the skirmish advantage unless the enemy has gone for no skirmishes at all, so it is risky to bring them under normal circumstances, but in a siege, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see how well they do here. Front line of Uruk-hai raiders going to be heading in first. The dwarves should repel them pretty easily though. The Uruk-hai crossbows, however, could provide some nice cover, as well as these Uruk-hai pikemen. The AP damage on these Uruk-hai reavers will be important, as well as the Uruk-hai berserkers. Multiple HP but no armour, so it'll be interesting to see how they hold up. Guards of Orthanc, they are now multiple HP spears, and they're one of the better spear units in the game now, which is going to be a bit of a boon for Isengard here. And then several units of Uruk-hai infantry. Moving on then to the fourth attacking army, we have Arcturus playing as Mordor. I think a slightly more elite Mordor army, because he's got the upgraded models on these Morannon units, Morannon infantry and halberds. He's also got some heavy maulers over here, and that extra AP damage. All of the defending factions are pretty heavily reliant on their armour as well. Upgraded Morannon archers. Back here we also have some Black Legion of Barad-dûr, potentially a very potent unit in this sort of situation. Another unit of Minas Morgul bodyguard, and then over here we also have the dismounted Temple Inquisitors, a Troll catapult, some Sauron's Will, and then at the back some Minas Morgul chosen. And then the final army, I believe, is Alisand playing as Gundabad, another very aggressive faction, so some Gundabad Guard, Witch Realm Scourge Raiders, Guardians of Khan Doom, and Blackwatch Legion, so some nice shielded units, Witch Realm Blackguard and Hammer Guard. And then we also have some Witch Realm Scourge Raiders, Pikemen, and some Trolls of Angmar back here, as well as some Trolls of Gundabad. This is a very powerful attacking army, I must say. And then we have at the front his trash, obviously, the Orc Halberds, Fellers, and Marauders, all ready to advance. So, I would definitely place the advantage in the attackers' favour here, if only because they probably have the skirmish advantage based on the level of archers they have, which is going to be somewhat frustrating, particularly I think for Bobo here at the front, who is going to have to just take it on the chin and wait. If the attackers decide to just try and skirmish down the dwarves from a distance, there's not really much they can do about that, because if the dwarves chase them out, they're going to be overwhelmed very, very quickly. But I think we will actually make a little cut, because it's going to take a little while for the attackers to advance into position. So as the assault begins from the front here, we can see that the Troll Catapult is very wisely, I think, going for the dwarves, because the dwarves are going to be more tightly packed, and it's going to be much easier for them to get shots off than trying to go around and avoid the Dalian archers. Now, as the catapult continues to move in, again, Bobo's in a difficult situation here, because he has to kind of just sit here and take this skirmish fire. He only has one unit of crossbows that can answer this, whereas Isengard have got several units of crossbows. They also have the Lurtz hunting pack and the crossbows, and Honestly, he needs to hope actually that Isengard do engage in here. He needs to hope these raiders get into combat as quickly as possible, because it makes it a much less attractive proposition for that catapult, and those crossbows will not have easy shots either. Now the Ironfoot crossbows are also going to be trying to get into a good position, but they don't have the best firing angle. That is a nice shot there from the catapult. The catapult's been pretty accurate thus far. The Dwarven catapult is also firing in, getting a few decent hits there, but also some friendly fire, because the spread is not easy, because the catapult's so close to his own lines that it's hitting some of his men as it goes through. And of course the defenders cannot afford much in the way of friendly fire. Now these Uruk-hai raiders of course will not break through on their own, and they're in these weird column formations. They do need to spread out a little bit and engage the entire Dwarven line. Just for that attrition damage, they need to be damaging the whole unit really. But having said that, Isengard are off to a very strong start here, because they have the skirmish advantage over the dwarves here. The dwarves do have a lot more infantry of course, and they should be able to hold against pretty much all of Isengard's infantry. But they shouldn't have much left once they're done. Isengard do have the tools to inflict quite a lot of damage. Stuff like the Uruk-hai berserkers in particular are going to be pretty nasty, although it looks like they've been left behind, interestingly enough. As well as the guards of Orthanc. Moran on halberds are moving forward as well, so some of the Mordor forces of Arcturos are also moving forth. Let's go and have a look at the other fronts and see what's happening. I mean, the Misty Mountains would be very well served trying to skirmish down Gondor, alongside the Mordor orcs under the command of Tydasium. Purely because, again, those mountain orc archers are so powerful. There are also some Melkor's Chosen, which I must have missed previously. They've moved over here, presumably because the cavalry is on this side. And honestly, as the defenders, if you need to use your cavalry fairly quickly in these situations, otherwise they're going to be more bottled up as the match goes on. And you can see actually that there is a skirmish fight going on over here. The veterans of Osgiliath are under fire, presumably from the orc archers, which they're going to be able to easily beat. These Wardens of Minas Ithil need to be careful, because they are not hidden, and the orc archers will be able to do a lot of damage to them as well, because they're not very well armoured. They're going to scurry away pretty quickly. There are a lot of elite Gondorians over here though, so they could be able to hold decently enough. These, the defending cavalry is still sort of running around, I think, looking for an opening, but honestly they're going to have no escape pretty soon, so they're going to need to sort of choose what they're doing and be quick about it. Well, if we have a look over here, the Troll catapult's still firing away. It's already been pretty effective up to this point, but the Uruk-hai crossbows are now sort of taking the reins of being like the really powerful unit over here. I think there are also some Moran-on archers, so the dwarves are really having a hard time of it over here. They may need some reinforcements actually pretty soon. Their front line is holding up well enough, and against the vast majority of these lower tier Isengard troops they will be able to hold, despite the fact it does look pretty grim, particularly with the Uruk-hai infantry over on this side. I'm somewhat sceptical of trying to get in closer purely because of the crashes that I suffered. But the Uruk-hai infantry are better than the other units, and they are a good unit. But against the higher tier dwarven stuff like the Axguard and the Erebor Legionnaires, they're not going to be able to cut the mustard here. But it's the attrition that the dwarves are going to suffer, which I'm slightly concerned about with regards to their future survival. Because those Uruk-hai crossbows are doing a lot of damage to the dwarven army. And the dwarves only have so many men. I mean, some Dalian marksmen have come over here to help out the front line, which is definitely a wise move considering the fact that this fight got underway first. But we can also see that over here I think the engagements are about to begin. Alasan has moved his Gundabad army forward, and he is going to be engaging the Dalian front line pretty soon. Dale are going to need more than this, I feel like, to withstand the Gundabad line. They might just be able to deal with the first wave of Gundabad, but as soon as the better troops come forward, they're going to need more. But more worryingly for the defenders, we can see over here that the orcs of Mordor are now cresting around to this other entrance, and the attackers are doing the right thing here. They're squeezing the defenders, trying to stretch them as much as they can. The defenders' biggest advantage in a situation like this is their quality, and trying to funnel the lower quality attackers into their defences. If you don't allow them to do that as easily, then often you're going to be on to a winner. As we move over here, things do look a little janky, I must admit, but again, I would rather actually be able to show it than have it crash on me. As this again, the classic scenario blob is forming. It looks like these Uruk-hai crossbows might be out of ammunition. If that's the case, they might be trying to sort of join the front line and push through the dwarves, although the dwarves are not the easiest force to push through. The balance of forces is evenly matched, which is actually good for the attackers, because it means that the dwarves are committed forward the vast majority of their infantry, and they're only just about breaking even. Meanwhile, Isengard and Mordor over here have reserves to spare. And looking at the amount of attackers moving around both flanks, things are looking very good for the attackers thus far. Ran on halberds moving forward as well. Those halberdiers could be invaluable on this front line, actually. The AP damage and their ability to sort of go toe-to-toe with some of the dwarven pole arms. It's going to be very good. Meanwhile, over here we have those Olag High. The Olag High, I think they thought about moving forward, but with the crossbows still intact, there are 2 units of crossbows in fact. I think they felt better off that. The Dragon Slayers are now moving forward as well, so a very elite dwarven unit, as well as the Highborns of Erebor. At this point, the dwarves look like they're going to be committing most of everything to try and hold this front, which is understandable, all things considered. That Dwarven Catapult still trying to fire, but most of the forces back here are kind of in loose formation. Going for the Black Legion is a good call, though, because the Black Legion are a very, very devastating trooper in this situation, because they can push through the line. And if the dwarves lose this line, the attackers could wash over them very quickly, so it's a perilous situation for Bobo to be in at the moment. As we move over here, it looks like Alasan has committed his trolls early, but that's understandable, because over here the line was quite thin. As long as he doesn't get hung up on those the Barding Herd too long, he should be in a pretty good place, and he is actually going to be able to get into these Dalian marksmen. Taking away some of the Dalian range superiority is good. I mean, I am impressed so far with how the attackers have approached this situation, although I am left wondering what the defenders are supposed to do. They do have a lot of elite troops, but they have so much ground to cover. I mean, as you can see here, the Swordmasters of Karnan are going to be sent forward to the front line to try and deal with these low-tier orc troops. Now, Gundabad's first wave is going to fall apart pretty quickly. If you're going to commit your trolls like this, I would say you probably need to commit forward your second wave very quickly. But it looks like the rest of Alasan's army is lagging behind quite a lot. If Dale can win on this front, actually, and throw off the Gundabad first wave quickly, he might have some reserves to send elsewhere in the battlefield, which it looks like is going to be required, because over here on the front, it does look like the devastating effect of the Black Legion of Barad-dûr has already come up. Well, this tactic has already borne fruit, shall we say. The Blackwatch Legion, of course, everyone knows what they can do, and the Black Legion of Barad-dûr are exactly the same kind of unit. Although I don't think they're quite as effective. They are shaken and they are taking a lot of heavy losses, but the fact that they've managed to disrupt the Dwarven line is all important at this point. I mean, Bobo is desperately going to be sending forward his Sons of Durin to try and plug the gap, and they will do that, to be fair to them. The Dwarven line will manage to sort of save itself, but they will have this kind of dent in their lines, and there is yet more and more Uruk-hai moving forward, and perhaps, rather worryingly, the Uruk-hai Berserkers are on their way, which are going to be very good at sustained melee with a lot of the Dwarven infantry. They're going to do a lot of damage, and also the Isengard General, the Guards of Orthanc are here. Not for the damage, but more for the ability to anchor the line. That's going to be worrying for them. The Ironfoot Spears, victory seems certain on the flank. The Sons of Durin are here. That will be the Dwarven army, certainly, because the other two armies have not been fully engaged in combat just yet. While over here, you can see that the Dalian forces have actually managed to break through the Orcs' first wave. Alasan letting his second wave is now arriving, but a little bit too late to sort of reinforce his first wave. The Guardians of Khan Doom are in combat, and they will do much better than the Orc Marauders, but they need to be careful over here. There are those Uruk-hai archers, and the Lurtz hunting pack come over here, so Isengard sending his archers over to attack Dale, which is bold, but for the time being it seems to be working out quite well, trying to whittle down the Dalian front line. Meanwhile, if we have a look at the back over here, we can see that the Bolgs champions, the Misty Mountains, are moving around the battlefield. They need to be careful, actually. I spy those stakes, and I hope that Feodon did as well, because he moved them. You can see these Orc armies. I mean, at this point I would just attack, crush the defenders underfoot, because this Mordor army isn't particularly elite. If you can attack Gondor from behind over here and let the Misty Mountains take on the frontal defence, if nothing else, it's going to keep Gondor pinned down. And if Gondor can't reinforce his allies, particularly the dwarves over here, I think things are going to be going against the defenders pretty quickly. Actually, I'm just going to turn the speed down a little bit again, so that... Oof, that is a grisly shot. Most of that was attacks on enemy forces as well, although he did hit his own Erebor legionaries in the back. Some more Moran on halberds are being sent forward, although the Dwarven front line has somewhat stabilised. The Black Legion's advance has kind of been turned back a little bit, and with the Dragon Slayers and the Sons of Durin and the Highborns of Erebor in the combat, they're going to be pretty tough to break down. Although having said that, I do think with the addition of the Uruk-hai Berserkers, which are in the combat at the front as well, that AP damage is going to whittle down the dwarves more and more. Bobo's going to have a lot of kills by the end of this, but I'm not sure whether his defense is going to be able to hold up, because he's got pretty much no reserves at this point. And if the attackers on the left-hand side of the minimap decide to attack and crush in on Gondor, the defenders are going to have very little in the way of options left, I think. There is a long way to go in this fight yet, so the defenders are not going to the attackers, I should say, are not simply going to be able to crush the defenders. Over here, we can see the Witch Realm Scourge Raiders have moved forwards, probably taking a bit of friendly fire, which is not great for them. The Trolls of Angmar have been largely dealt with, pretty, by lower tier troops, admittedly, as well. There are these Sword Masters of Kharnan as well. The Dalian front line is pretty haggard at this point, but it is still functional, and the fact that they are still holding Gundabad at bay is a good thing. I do wonder how much in the way of reserves Dale have, and they are actually sending over some of their Lake Town units to help the dwarves out. What is going on over here? Oh, we have wargs. I think those are the Bolg's champions. Indeed they are. So Theoden managing to get in behind the enemy lines, charging into the Bardian marksman. This could be pretty crippling for the dwarves. They really need their catapult, and the Bolg's champions will make mincemeat of a catapult crew. Although the Bolg's champions are in danger of being overwhelmed over here. I mean, it is only Lake Town units and archers, but you need to keep cavalry moving, especially wargs, because when their hit points have been expended, their stats are not the best. Their defensive stats, certainly. A rear charge onto the dwarven lines as well could be crippling. I mean, that's a lot of high-tier dwarven units, and if you can do a lot of shock damage to one of their higher-tier units, that's going to be less work that the Isengard and Mordor infantry has to do. And indeed, they're going to do it. I mean, it's a bit of a disjointed charge, I think. In fact, the axe thrower is managing to sort of break the charge a little bit, which is very good from Bobo to notice that. But even so, there are now the Minas Morgul Chosen doing the same thing that the Black Legion did. We also have the Gandalf's retinue bodyguard trying to charge in and reinforce the line, but they're charging into spears. This is more of an act of desperation, I think, at this point than anything else from the defenders. The Olag High are also moving forward. They're going to be able to carve their way through the crossbowmen, certainly. And then we also have the Uruk-hai pikemen, and they are going to be able to anchor the progress now that this front line has made. So very, very well done from the attackers so far. The defenders have tried their best, to be fair, but even so, I mean, the Gandalf's retinue bodyguard, that's a nice hit from the Dwarven catapult there. And the Bolg's champions have been largely expended at this point. There's only 7 of them left. Oh, hello. The Warg Riders. Looks like I missed the conflict between them and the Earls of Dale, because the Earls were flattened by the Wargs, it looks like. The Earls trying to do their best to sort of stop this inexorable advance, but the Athala Rangers, who were hidden up till now, unfortunately for them, they were charged by the Warg Riders. The Rangers are a unit that the defenders at this point can scarcely afford to lose with their body piercing. And now the Blackwatch Legion are on their way forward, so Dale could suffer the same fate as the Dwarves. This is really backs to the wall stuff over here. And interestingly enough, they've completely avoided Gondor at this point, for the most part, the attackers. They've singled out the Dwarves and Dale, which honestly is not the worst idea. Starling has kind of been forced to keep his position because there are still troops sort of facing off against him. Powerless to watch as his allies are kind of put to the sword. The Minas Morgul Chosen are routing, amazingly enough, so they must have been hit directly by the catapult. There goes the Isengard General as well, at the hands of the Sons of Durin. Those Guards of Orthanc are going to be no match for the AP damage on them. But the catapult is now finally going to be silenced by the Olag High. There are these Blacklock Engineers over here, however. What are they firing at? Bolg's champions? They're still alive. Meanwhile, the Dalian catapult has moved over here. The Snow Trolls, there are only 2 of them remaining, it seems, but they're still going to get in there with the Lake Town infantry and do as much damage as they possibly can. I do worry for the defenders, but the fact is they're still alive, and the attackers are running out of reserves to throw into this meat grinder. Although it does look like eventually it's going to bear fruit, because these sword masters are being sent in now. But the Uruk-hai pikes are sort of on the front line now, which leads me to believe the dwarves, their days are numbered over here. Blackrock Engineers trying to get into a good position. The Olag High running around, being a nuisance. The Warg Riders, they're wavering amazingly, so they must have been hit by something. The Minas Morgul Chosen returned from routing behind the enemy lines. That's terrible for the defenders, especially seeing as these Earls of Dale are now caught by them. Really bad news from them. Let's see what the Blackwatch Legion have been able to do on this flank. You can see that the skulls, actually amazingly, interestingly enough, I suppose, they've attacked on a front, the Dalian front line had already fallen apart. But yeah, Dale, they don't really have much of a front line anymore. They have clusters of troops trying to hold back the tide that is coming their way. Alisan does have reserves as well. He has Witch Realm Pikemen and he has his Witch Realm units as well. So I think that in the end this is going to come down to whether or not Gondor can hold up in a defensive location and try and outlast the enemy.
The enemy are badly bloodied. They have lost half their men.
But I don't think that's going to be happening at this point. I feel as though the attackers have just had access to too much in the way of high-tier troops against these defenders, and giving the attackers a skirmish advantage over the defenders in a situation like this is always a little bit suspect. I mean, especially in a more open battle like this, if there were walls where the attackers would struggle to use their archers, I'd understand it a little bit more, but in this situation the attackers have been able to leverage their skirmishes to huge effect, especially here on the front line where the dwarves had to just sit there and take it, essentially, in addition to being accosted by so many melee forces. And the worst part of it was they did get reinforced a little bit by Dale, but Dale had to defend their own lines, and Gondor has kind of just been stuck over here, marooned as it were, because they can't move, because if they abandon this location the enemies are just going to pour in all over the settlement. I do wonder what they're going to be doing from here on out. What's going on over here? We do actually have some Gandalf's retinue bodyguard charging into the heavy goblin infantry. They're going to continue moving forwards into the 10 missile damage mountain Uruk archers. That missile damage is comparable to javelins. They're not AP, but even so, that amount of base missile damage from an archer is ridiculous. The White Uruk spearmongers are moving forward. The cavalry needs to steer well clear of an armour-piercing polearm like that. The cavalry is going to be doing its best to thin out these ranks. This Goblin King's bodyguard's a bit vulnerable. Ooh, heavy Goblin crossbows. A full frontal charge. That's bold. Only a couple of them fell. I mean, that is where the Gondorian cavalry does come into its own. It might not be good in a cav-to-cav engagement, but it is incredibly durable to missiles. And even the crossbows there weren't able to put them to the sword quickly enough to save themselves. Meanwhile, over here, the buckling of the front line has been complete. Bobo's army has basically been destroyed. The Catapult crew is routing off. What's left of Isengard and Mordor are free to pour in from the front, and there goes King Dane at the hands of several pointy sticks. And I do wonder if that catapult has got ammunition left. If it does, then Gondor are in a horrendous amount of trouble. And over there you still have the dismounted Temple Inquisitors and some Minas Morgul bodyguard. I guess that's just dead bodies. But over here you can see that Dale have also just been thrown aside. The vast majority of that other Mordor army just completely circumvented Gondor and has instead devoted their time to helping finish off Dale. At this point, Dale have been completely thrown aside as well. The Girian's paladins are here, trying their best to hold out, kill as many as they can, but they're up against higher tier troops over here. The Guardians of Khan Doom and the Blackwatch Legion don't go down without a fight. And even though they're traditionally units that the Girian's paladins are quite good against, it goes without saying that in this situation they are a little bit outmatched. And now the Witch Realm units and the Gundabad Guard are coming forward, the Earls of Escaroth routing from the field. Wonder where the Lurt's hunting pack went. I mean, at this point this is exactly the kind of battle the Orcs love to see, just chaos. Orcs running everywhere, destroying everything in their path. Oh, hello, what's that? Oh, that's the Uruk-hai Berserkers chanting. They're doing their thing. Very good unit to use against the dwarves, provided they don't get skirmished down, of course. And over here, the Sword Masters of Carnan. I mean, at this point, it's kind of a mad retreat, I think, to the Gondorian defensive position, but I'm not sure that Dale and the dwarves are going to be able to save anything too substantial. I mean, these Sword Masters are just going to be completely overwhelmed by the blob of troops that are coming towards them. More and more men. Guards of Orthanc still alive. They survived their encounter with the Sons of Durin, which is good for them. Their general did not, however. Minas Morgul Chosen did their job again. That, my god, look at this. What is going on over here? The Lurt's hunting pack. They were caught out. All on their lonesome, the Gandalf's retinue bodyguard. If these Melkor's Chosen get into them... No, Melkor's Chosen. Micro was lost on them. And they weren't able to pin down the Gandalf's retinue bodyguard. Although at this point, it looks like they're getting cornered on all sides by pikes and by Melkor's Chosen. I think Gandalf's number is up here. I mean, he's got nowhere to go. That's a cliff wall over there. Or does he have somewhere to go? No, he does have an escape route, amazingly enough. He can go up here. Although at this point
Continue like this, we will smash the enemy.
I don't really know what value cavalry is going to have at this point, because it's going to be just sort of Starling against the world at this point. He's going to be here, and he's going to be attacked from all sides. The Dalian Royal Guard managed to save themselves, but Phaedon and Tidasium's army is coming forward. There's going to be really very little, I think, that Starling is going to be able to do. He can prolong his fate. We'll see how many kills he's able to get, but several of these attacking armies are still in pretty good condition. There are also quite a lot of high-tier troops. These Orc Javelins taking a charge from the Gandalf's retinue bodyguard. They're going to have to be the heroes of the hour if anything is going to be gained here from Gondor. As we have a look at the percentages of kills, I mean, that really speaks for itself. The attackers are winning at this point, where the attackers are usually losing. Those Orc Javelins got absolutely mulched, though. Impressive. I mean, the Gandalf's retinue bodyguard probably doesn't want to be in sustained melee with the Sauron's will, because they've got some nice AP damage on them, and also the Melkor's Chosen are on their way. And several of these knights are going to be caught and cut down. Good cav play, but futile at this point, as the Orcs go through the buildings. My word, look at this. Tidasium's army has just been in one giant column this whole time. It's like a swarm of bees. Meanwhile, over here, the Melkor's Chosen a full frontal charge into the Gondor spearmen. Bold. Not entirely without merit, I suppose, considering the use of cavalry is coming to a close in this particular map. And really, Gondor have got little in the way of men they can afford to lose. These troll drummers are just sort of slowly waddling around the battlefield, banging their drums. And now here comes Tidasium's first assault onto this flank. What sort of men have they got out here? They've still got a force out here from Orange Phaedon, and I assume he will attack from this side when the attack is fully underway on this flank over here. While the Blackshot Dragon Slayers, only 13 of them, but they do manage to escape. Alasan is going to be moving over here. I mean, Gondor do need to pull off something quite impressive here in order to be successful. The Wardens of Minas Ithil, however, are a body-piercing projectile unit, so they will be able to do an incredible amount of damage to a lot of these lower-tier Orc units, but I'm not sure whether they're going to be able to do enough damage. The Athelian Rangers as well, though. I mean, it's not impossible that Gondor could win this. It's unlikely, though. Tidasium does need to sort of get most of his troops into battle as soon as possible. If he can force his way through with the trolls and go for some of these projectile units, then that will be exactly what they need. And they need to attack from multiple angles as well, the attackers. That's what they did so well earlier on in the battle. If they can do it here as well, they will pretty quickly wipe Gondor from the face of the earth, I think. These troll drummers. They're such a good unit. I love them. So we've got over here some Minas Morgul bodyguard. Let's get in a little closer as the trolls
Like this, we will
continue their assault. The heavy goblins are also in there as well. There's a big tide of trash. The Orc Maulers are in here as well, though. The AP damage that they deliver will certainly not go amiss against these Gondorians. Karandros Swordmasters, going to be difficult for these lower tier Orcs to take on, but of course numbers here are the key. It's hard to see what these arrows are hitting with these trees in the way. But yes, the Wardens of Minas Ithil. I think they might be the single most deadly ranger in the game, at least in terms of like individual prowess. But their cost and Gondor's difficulty in defending them in an open field has led them to sort of be considered a bit of a niche unit, unlike the Wardens of Elos Tyrion, which have been sort of lauded as being such a powerful unit for Lindon. And over here we have the trolls have managed to buckle the front line. 2 units of spears and a unit of swordmasters are not going to be sufficient to stop the Orc hammer. And over here it does look like the attack on the other front is coming. And again, the fact that these units were sort of tied up over here by an army always being here from Orange Phaedon was a good move. Having said that, these Gondor infantry are moving forward. I mean, these guards of Osgiliath are needed elsewhere at this point. How did it come to this? Gondor spears broken and fighting to the death, because I would say that in this scenario I never really got the sense that the defenders were going to be able to put up a fight in this one. Unlike the previous one that I covered, the Reclaiming Sauron's Mace, where I felt like the defenders, had they utilised their forces a little bit more wisely, they had a chance. In this one, I feel like they were always going to be in horrendous trouble based on the amount of ground they had to cover and the amount of skirmish power that the attackers had to hand. These Uruk-hai archers are wavering, which is amusing. Those white Uruks are in the background, and the Goblin King's bodyguard. The Mountain Uruk archers with their 10 missile damage are going to be firing into these Gondor spears. I do wonder which one of the defenders will have the most kills. I would imagine it would probably be Bobo, purely because the attackers did have to try and force their way through him. But we shall see. Gondor have got a lot of archers left, and that is actually working against them here, amusingly enough, because they have little in the way of melee troops they can use to defend. Very thin lines of resistance. I mean, these are very elite troops, which will hold back the tide for some time. I mean, Tidasium's army has probably been completely cut in half by the Rangers. But if you look over here, they still have more than enough men to just sort of tank these losses, and they also have the Witch Realm units. They've got more units back there. So even with the body piercing, I don't think they're going to be able to be up to much at this point. And at this point, the Guards of Osgiliath are switching their position. At least one of them is. To presumably try and meet the Guards of Osgiliath, the Uruk-hai in melee. All of these units that still have ammunition, the Wardens of Minas Ithil, the General's Bodyguard unit with Faramir in it. The Dalian Royal Guard are going to be sent to the front lines. This is presumably the last strong front line that the defenders can afford to put up, as we're sort of approaching the final 5,000 frames. I mean, over here, this army, there are more over here, and they could actually, at this point, the heavy goblin spears could go around this force and attack this front line in the back, which would then open up the rear of the Gondorian last stand for assault, and it looks like Orange Phaedon is going to be deploying his heavy goblin spears, because the Mountain Uruk blades will not be able to push their way through the Guards of Osgiliath on their own. And in fact, I feel as though the defenders realise this, because the Dalian Royal Guard and the Pelagian Marines that are out of ammunition are heading over here. Oh my, there's actually another way through as well over here that I completely missed. Things are even worse for the defenders than I felt. This Melkor's Chosen is still alive as well. I mean, the Melkor's Chosen is going to be able to push their way through over here with the support of the Black Uruks and the Mountain Orc Berserkers. There's nothing over here that's really anti-cavalry if the Pelagian Marines are out of ammunition. The Blackshot Dragon Slayers would be if they have more of their men in the unit, but they don't have the killing power to kill off the Melkor's Chosen quickly enough at this point. Wardens of Minas Ithil have their swords out, so they're out of ammunition. So their body piercing days are over. It's only the veterans which do not have the body piercing. And now the heavy goblin crossbowmen are free to shoot into the flanks of the Gondorian shielded Fountain Guard. Orc archers, Morannon infantry. So yeah, this scenario needs a little bit of work. I think that the attackers need significantly less skirmish power. And really I think that's kind of it, because I feel as though maybe taking away some of the attackers' elite units wouldn't go amiss either. Because it is a lot of surface area that the defenders have to cover when they're horribly outnumbered. Yeah, this had the feel of the old scenarios where the orcs just kind of punched their way through every defence that they ever came across. Which is a little bit unfortunate, but I do like the map, at the very least. The map is... I do like the fact there are multiple ways in, because one of the traps that scenarios can fall into, of course, is just having a single way in, and it just becomes an endless grind. Whereas this one, at least there are multiple options for attacking in multiple places as well. The fact that there are multiple ways into this Gondorian last stand over here is okay. But the fact that the attackers are so easily able to exploit it is maybe where things go a little bit wrong. Because look over here, I mean, look at this. I mean, the Gundabad army is going to be able to just destroy this Gondor infantry, and then the only thing Starling has to back it up is a single unit of pikes. You know, these Melkor's Chosen are going this way? Oh, they're Blackback Berserkers as well. As if the attackers needed more. My word. Heavy Goblin infantry. Oh. The Troll Drummers are moving forward. There goes King Bran, shot in the face. Unceremoniously destroyed. The Troll Drummers are here. They probably won't be able to terrify these units though, to be fair. The Shielded Fountain Guard, the Wardens of the White Tower, and the Elisar's Honor Guard are, of course, pretty damn strong, and some of them maybe lock morale, the Fountain Guard especially, I think. I haven't seen them rout, and they are eager in the face of horrendous odds. But amazingly enough, the defenders have managed to throw off the attack here in the middle. But ultimately it doesn't really matter because they're so stretched and isolated at this point. I mean, this Gondor Spear unit is surrounded, just slowly being bled. Goblin King's bodyguard is still fully healthy. Where are the White Uruks, I wonder? There they are. White Uruks fearmongers. What is going on over here? Victory is certain over here. The Palagir Marines are ill-equipped to deal with a force of this magnitude in melee. And then over here, again, the defenders are doing their best to hold this avenue of attack as well. But the Blackback Mountain Berserkers, I feel like the amount of damage they're going to be able to lay down is going to be too significant. There are also those Melkors chosen, which whenever they feel like it could turn around. And then over here, the inexorable advance of the Orcs, the dismounted Temple Inquisitors, which as yet have not even bloodied their swords.
Our men have fought long and are becoming tired.
Well, I guess that's fair enough, considering this is from the point of view of Isengard. Isengard don't have that many units left in the battle, actually. These Gondor archers still have ammunition. Black Uruks in the mountains there. The Troll Drummers are not as good as standard Trolls in melee. They're kind of like the Troll Catapult in that respect. But at this point, may as well throw everything in.
The enemy force remains.
Here comes the Troll Catapult crew. They're going to be running past, and they're going to be going for the Gondor archers, so even now, the attackers... I do think that the attackers have played this exactly right. They've played to their strengths for the most part. There's very little to complain about with regards to what the attackers have done. And the defenders didn't really do an awful lot wrong either. I mean, you could argue maybe Gondor should have reinforced his allies sooner, but that would have just encouraged Mordor and the Misty Mountains to attack him sooner, and I feel like that honestly would have made the battle even more one-sided, because then the defenders would have been pulled apart even more. But we'll never know now. I mean, this is a scenario that I'm sure will be tweaked in the future.
If we continue like this, we will smash the enemy.
Well, quite. Over here, the Blackback Mountain Berserkers combining with the Heavy Goblins and the Black Uruks. Still some Heavy Goblin Halberds back there. Dark days indeed. The veterans of Osgiliath, good in melee, but they're not going to be good enough. Chaos descends, and it's really, I think, just going to be a matter of how long these Gondorian elites want to hold out for. Although, to be fair, it looks like they're going to fall apart quicker. The Goblin King's bodyguard is in here, some elites are here for the attackers. Oh yeah, the Witch Realm Hammer Guard are here, they're doomed. This is going to be the end for them. What's going on over here? Ithelian Rangers. Victory seems certain for them. Well, no, evenly matched. They were doing okay against the Mountain Uruk Blades in melee, though. The veterans of Osgiliath. And so the isolated town falls. Not with a roar as such, but more of a whimper. Although, to be fair, I mean, it's not a horrendously unbalanced scenario. Looking at the percentages of kills, they aren't going to sort of reach the sweet spot of being within 10%, but they're not hugely far away. I feel as though taking away the attackers' huge amount of skirmish would be the thing to do, and then this scenario would likely be an awful lot closer. It would still be very hard for the defenders, but in a way that's correct. You want it to be harder for the defenders, because otherwise if you make it hard for the attackers, you make the attackers reluctant to move forward, and then it turns into a sort of elongated battle, which the attackers are reluctant to move forward, and that always annoys me a little bit. But the White Uruks are now in the battle. A little bit too late to show them what they can do, but this is going to be the end here. Looks like this is going to be where Gondor make their last stand. The Melkor's chosen, recharging the veterans of Osgiliath. The giant maces. Pretty much it, although the Wardens of Minas Ithil, I would be curious to see how many kills each faction got, but of course we're going to be looking at the Isengard kill totals, which, considering they were the first ones in against the Dwarves, is not likely to be a huge amount. Goblin King's bodyguard. Azog will be cackling all the way back home to Moria. Guardians of Khan Doom, yep, this is going to be the end. Where is the last stand? It is going to be the Dalian Royal Guard then. Nope, it isn't. It is in fact the veterans of Osgiliath. And that is it. Where are the final units? And that's pretty much it, right? Or is it this one over here? Player has admitted defeat. What's this red triangle? Oh, it's one routing spearman. He will live to tell the tale. So having a look at the kills, yeah, Bovo got the most. I'm not terribly surprised about that. Dale were kind of a little bit pulled apart and all over the place. So again, it's not a huge surprise to me that they got the lowest amount of kills because they were the ones more easily separated. Having a look at the attackers, Isengard getting the most, interestingly enough. One Mordor army only got 280, which is strange. I don't know who that would be. That might have been Tydassium, actually. Having a look at the battle statistics screen. The casualties inflicted by Isengard, did any of them break 100? Yes, indeed they did. And unsurprisingly, it was the crossbows against the Dwarven line. But a decent, most of their units actually got fairly even amounts of kills. The Lurtz hunting pack got 93 kills, considering they engaged in a skirmish fight with Dale. That's not bad at all. So yeah, this scenario needs a little bit of work. I feel as though the attackers just need to have their skirmishes toned down a little bit. The Mountain Uruk archers from the Misty Mountains, they should not be part of these scenarios for the foreseeable future, I don't think, because they are a unit which they aren't entirely... Like, when you face a unit like the Oathbreakers, you know they're going to be extremely powerful. With the Mountain Uruk archers, there's no reason for them to be as powerful as they are. But personally, that's just me. I mean, it might be that people want to see more of them, but for me, they kind of... It's like false advertising in a way. They look shitty, but they're amazing. But yeah, other than that, I like the map though. The map is exactly the sort of thing I like to see from a scenario, sort of more defensive based, but also there are multiple ways in. Now in this situation, obviously the attackers were able to take full advantage of that because of their huge skirmish advantage, even though Dale were on the field. But yeah, I mean, bit of tweaking is necessary, but I do look forward to seeing more of these scenarios because it is, of course, early on in the new patch. People are still getting a little bit more used to it, so I'm more than happy to show them when they show up. So yes, thank you for watching this. I think the next video might be my 2K special, depending upon the scheduling of certain things. Again, it's a little bit tricky to sort of put an exact date on it, but it will probably be a Siege of Dol Amroth. If not, though, there will be another battle replay because I do have a sort of collection that I can use at this point. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next.